For those of you that do not know me, I'm Julia Johnson. I am your lower school counselor here at Rabun Gap. And we are so excited that you have chosen to spend your Tuesday evening with us as we continue our Parent Summit series with Protect Young Eyes, where they're going to talk to us about technology and everything that comes with it as parents. And as a parent myself of a very little one, I am very excited to have some partners as we navigate technology as it is ever changing. So this evening with Protect Young Eyes, we have Doug Crawford, who comes to us with 20 years of experience in this field and with Protect Young Eyes. So I'm going to turn it over to Doug Crawford.
Good evening. It is my joy to be able to be with you. And I flew in this morning into the Spartanburg, Greenville, South Carolina airport, and then took the drive over. It was fun. My mom has 3 sisters in Greenville, so I actually had lunch with one of my uncles and said hey to a cousin before driving across over here. I live in Southwest Florida, in Venice, Florida, right around where Hurricane Ian came through. And because I travel a lot, I got to watch the hurricane from a very quiet, calm Long Beach, California, while my wife and my 2 sons went through a hurricane. And it's probably one of the most kind of humbling experiences when you want to protect your family and you can do just absolutely nothing about it. And sometimes I think as parents, we kind of feel that way when it comes to our use of technology, that this is just a dumpster fire that we don't understand, and we want to walk around pretending like everything's all good, but on the inside we're just falling apart because we're digital foreigners raising digital natives. Our kids understand this. They're always finding ways around all of our settings. They're always going to find all these things and beat us to this, and we feel helpless. And if you walk out of this presentation, we're going to say a couple of hard things, and that's going to be okay. There's some challenging things. But if you walk out of here thinking, man, don't just beat us up for like 90 minutes, I have failed you. I want you to walk away this evening encouraged, informed, empowered, and ready to maybe have some really difficult conversations with your kids and possibly make some very difficult decisions that you need to inform your kids about when it comes to the safety and protection of all of those under your roof and their use of technology. Kind of give you a little bit of introduction of who we are as an organization. We have been around for almost 8 years now, and I have been with Chris since 2017. My wife and I were the first 2 people that came on board with him. We are from the Grand Rapids, Michigan area and moved to Venice, Florida 2 years ago. And I was a youth pastor in the Grand Rapids area, and I had watched the local news. This is when Snapchat was just coming out on the scene, and the local news was going to have a story on Snapchat at 10 o'clock news. I was like, okay, I'm staying up to watch that, and so I did. And as I'm watching an interview, there are 2 experts being interviewed. One is Chris McKenna, the founder of Protect Young Eyes, and a guy named Blair Babcock, who works for the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI. It was his job to find people who use technology to harm children and bring them to justice. Interesting thing about Blair is that he's my next door neighbor. And I was like, oh, well done, Blair, you did a great job. And so next time we're at the mailbox together, I said, Blair, you need to introduce me to Chris, and the 2 of you need to come and talk to the parents at our church, because we are woefully underinformed when it comes to this, and to have people and experts to do this, to come in. And that's our relationship with Chris. As Protect Young Eyes grew, he kind of expanded his presentation team, and I'm now the Chief Presentation Officer. We have 7 presenters. I just this last semester spoke to over 20,000 students, and I don't have 1 week between now and spring break where I'm not somewhere at least once during the week. And so we are very active and informed and involved people when it comes to communities and those kinds of things. But not only are we working with local communities and presentations like this in local schools and those kinds of things, we also work with law enforcement, we work with those in government. We are even resourced and referenced, and our opinions recruited by executives at Snapchat and Apple and Google when it comes to their parental controls and updates and those kinds of things. We are one of the resources that they go to when saying, okay, what do we need to do for you to say good things about us? It's basically kind of how that conversation goes. And so, but we are very glad to be able to spend time with you. This is my family, and I am maybe the youngest grandparent in the room. I'm usually the youngest grandparent in most rooms. We kind of cheated the cycle a little bit by adopting a 12 and a 9-year-old 12 years ago. In 2010, Cheyenne and Ryan were in need of a home, and I'd been their youth pastor, and Ryan's mother passed away. And so we said, hey, come live with us. And that was, they're biologically cousins, but raised in the same home. And so again, in 2010, we had a 12 and 9-year-old join our family. And that kind of allowed me to put into practice some of the things that I have learned to develop in our presentations here. It made me a better youth pastor, because I was a parent of a student of that age. And it also prepared me and gave me a first go around, so that when we had our younger kids, we kind of already had some things in place. Ironically, I've never parented an 8-year-old. And so JD is 7, and Ryan was 9 when we brought him into our family. And so in June of this year, we'll finally close that gap, and I'll have advice for those of you who have 3rd graders. But other than that, my wife and I were high school sweethearts. JD is sitting on her lap, and sitting on my lap is my son Silas. In the top right, or the top left corner here is my son-in-law Marquel. He had married my daughter Cheyenne in November of 2020. And this last April, she gave birth to the little guy that's in my arms in the picture on this side. That is my grandson. And then in the white shirt in the top right corner of the family photo is my son Ryan. And he's 21, Cheyenne is 24, my son-in-law is 28, and one of my sisters-in-law is 27. So my kids kind of blend in with my siblings. My wife and I are both firstborns of 6. So it almost seems as though our older kids are like children 7 and 8, as opposed to the grandkids. But this is my family, and I share that with you because I want to let you know that I am walking these roads with you. I'm not somebody that just has a lot of great things to say, but no practice implementing them, no struggles trying to figure all this stuff out. I am learning with you, and I'm here to help all of us kind of come together. And what we have found is the difficult thing is that we have a kind of an inverted responsibility triangle here that we talk. Oh, that's the next slide. So I will show you that that's what I was talking about. We'll get to in just a second. So the numbers are staggering. So as we look at these things, we don't have the 2022 numbers yet, but if you look at the number of reported sexually explicit images that are reported to NCMEC, the National Center for Sexual Exploitation, for missing and exploited children, they have a report every year. If you find a sexually explicit photo or video of a child and you report it, this is the organization that it goes to. And in 2019, that number was at 16.9 million. In 2020, that number was almost 22 million. And in 2021, that number was nearly 30 million images. Now, those numbers seem alarming. Those are the individual images and videos. If we were to count all of them that were reported, including the duplicates, the number in 2021 was 85 million images. And so we're seeing a very discouraging trend. Our children are being exploited at a record rate. And the hard thing is, for those of us that are, again, as parents and grandparents, growing up, if you wanted to get that kind of content, you had to know a guy. Or maybe you found something, a hidden folder, or you had, like, it was very hard to find this kind of content. And it was mostly middle-aged white men who were exchanging them and producing them. I was speaking at a very prominent school in the northeast side of Atlanta this past fall. I'll be speaking there again this coming fall. They have very high academic scores all over the place. The week that I was there, they had to confiscate a cell phone that a 3rd grader had used to send explicit images of themselves to a 5th grader in their school. They needed to turn it over to local law enforcement. And so what do we do when we have self-generated content of minors sending pictures of themselves? How do we judge this in court? Because again, the laws are written for adults exchanging images of children, not children exchanging images of children. And so we believe that there is a broad breadth of responsibility, and it ought not be on the shoulders of our children. Sadly, for the most part, it is. It's left to them to make wise decisions on devices that are not set up for their protection. And so again, our presentations for kindergarten through 12th grade that we give now, we give to all of the students tomorrow. I want to let you know they're not getting this talk. They're getting age-appropriate talks. Okay, so don't think, oh my goodness, you talk about all of this in front of us. I don't want my 7-year-old hearing that. I'm not going to talk to your 7-year-old the same way I'm talking to your grown adults. We will be talking about sexting, but we're not going to talk about it in the term sexting. We'll be talking about what happens if you see a picture of somebody that shows the parts that are usually covered by their swimsuit. Or what do you do if somebody you don't know tries to talk to you? Again, we could say, sure, that's predator, but we call them tricky people. Our kids need to have language and have understanding of how to handle this. And I want you to let you know that that our instruction to your kids is if they see that kind of stuff, and that kind of stuff happens, for them to put the device down and to tell someone. And we work through, okay, who are those people that you should talk to? Well, our mom and dad, cool, but what happens at school? What happens at your friend's house? What happens at grandma and grandpa's house? What happens? And kind of go through that so they can have an understanding of, okay, when this happens, I know what to do. We can kind of take some of the mystery out of this. And so they say, oh yeah, I know what that is. It's not that big of a deal. And I know what to do with this. I put it down and I tell someone. Because the responsibility is so much on our children right now. What we're trying to do is to make it so that our tech companies are creating platforms and software platforms and devices that are geared toward protection, especially of children, by default. There are some things that we're trying to work with Apple and Google so that based upon the birth age of the Google or Apple ID, there are certain defaults that are automatically in place on devices. Which is why it's so critically important that we make certain we get the dates right. Because right now, did you know that you can change your birthday 5 times on Snapchat? I have no idea why you would change your birthday. I only have one. How many of you have more than one? What do you? And why is that a need to change your birthday five times? What it allows is for kids to be able to say, okay, I'm going to say that I'm 18 or whatever age, and I'm 10, 11 years old, and because I have to be at least 13 to get Snapchat, I'll just lie about my age to get what I want. And our kids think that they're the only ones doing that. Until they run into a 43-year-old woman who's also pretending to be a 15-year-old young lady or a young man. And so we need to hold these companies responsible for this, that get Congress involved for on the device levels and parents involved, children also as well. So I'm going to take 6 minutes. I'm going to try to adjust my sweater just a little bit so it's not hitting the microphone. 6 minutes for you to hear Chris's Senate testimony in front of the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee in July of 2019. And so this is a really just insightful video. Again, it's worth taking 6 minutes for you to see and to hear some hard things of the realities of why we are so passionate about what we're doing and coming alongside parents and families to create safer digital environments.
Good morning, Chairman Graham, Senator Blumenthal, members of the committee. Thank you so much for allowing all of us this opportunity to speak today. I cannot think of a more noble cause for all of us to be spending our time on than the safety and protection of our children. I began Protect Young Eyes 5 years ago because the internet is complex, and even diligent parents are overwhelmed by the digital choices their children are facing. Through thousands of hours of research, hundreds of presentations at schools around the country, and dozens of articles examining digital trends, we have witnessed both the wonderful potential and the troubling and pervasive darkness that exists in the pockets of millions of young people today. I'm certain that in the course of today's discussion, we will hear difficult stories. I wish they were uncommon. In March 2019, CNN reported that Instagram was the leading social media platform for child grooming by sexual predators. Our own test accounts quickly discovered that young people, particularly young girls, can be hunted like prey. We started an Instagram account with 2 photos and tried to mimic the behavior of an average teen girl. We posted 2 selfies with 3 hashtags each, searched a few hashtags, and liked a few photos. Within a week, we had dozens of men sending us images of their genitals, telling us they were horny, and sending us hardcore pornography through direct messages. Even after we told all of them that we were only 12, they were relentless. A recent poll of 2,000 teens found that nearly 75% of them had received pornographic direct messages from strangers on Instagram, even if they had a private account. But you won't find any warnings in the App Store descriptions for Instagram that mention anything about sexual predators, direct message risks, sex trafficking, or hardcore pornography. Instagram's defaults are not set for child safety or data privacy, even though Instagram is rated 12+ by Apple and 13+ by Google. At Protect Young Eyes, we've also seen firsthand a predatory symbiotic relationship that exists between Instagram and Snapchat, both used by 75% of teens today. Many Instagram predators quickly shuttle kids over to Snapchat, where evidence disappears. For example, one relentless pedophile on Instagram who calls himself Daddy invites young girls to join him in Snapchat with Instagram posts like 12+-year-old slave girls, obedient whores only, or hit me up on Snap to be daddy's naughty girl. Snapchat is where explicit content on Pornhub lives just seconds away from every user through backdoors within the app. The app knowingly allows a well-documented list of porn performers to make thousands of dollars daily through their premium Snap accounts. Snapchat is where harmless-looking face filters can encourage kids to share their location on Snap Map. It's the app that gave a Coors beer ad to 13-year-olds, even though they tout age gating. It's the app where every kid, regardless of age, has access to the Discover News section, where they are taught how to engage in risky sexual behaviors such as hookup, group, anal, or torture sex, how to sell drugs, and how to hide internet activity from parents using incognito mode. But again, you won't find anything in Snapchat's App Store descriptions that warn parents about premium Snapchat accounts, predator risks of using Snap Maps, or the hyper-sexualized content in Discover News. Snapchat is rated 12+ by Apple and 13+ by Google. Tech companies will tell us that ratings are already in place. However, ratings are not uniform, lack transparency, and there's little accountability for inaccurate ratings. For example, Twitter was rated 4+ for a decade, even though hardcore porn and prostitution was everywhere. It is still breaking Apple and Google's no porn policy, but only claims infrequent or mild sexual content in the app description. Netflix is rated 4+ in Apple's App Store, but teen in Google Play. VPNs, which allow teens to circumvent parental controls, are rated 4+. Most social media platforms are rated 12+ by Apple, even though COPPA restricts use by children until age 13. Obviously, the current app ratings process is broken. Tech companies will tell us that protecting kids is a parent's responsibility. However, this position ignores the ubiquitous nature of the internet. Even if I do everything right to protect my own 14-year-old daughter, with almost 90% of teens owning a smart device, a simple ride on the bus or a visit to a friend's house can expose her to life-altering content. Never before in human history have young people had the ability to so radically change the trajectory of each other's lives so quickly. Tech companies will tell us that safeguards are already in place, but it currently takes over 30 steps to properly set up parental controls on an iPhone. We need to simplify this process to help more parents protect their children. For example, better age-based defaults would instantly and easily protect millions of kids. The addition of easy controls over school and bedtime could shut off distracting apps during these very critical times. Tech companies will tell us that regulating apps is too big of a job, it can't be done. However, video games are already successfully doing it, and the ESRB shows us a path that could be applied by reasonable individuals to apps. In fact, it was Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook who recently said, "I believe we need more effective role for governments and regulators." And we agree. Our hope is to create safer digital places for young people. Two simple solutions could change everything. First, create a uniform, independent, and accountable rating system for apps. And second, enact better defaults based on the age provided during device and app setup. Let's fix this for the kids. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
So we've worked with the federal government, we've done things with the state of Utah, and the governor signing some things. We have an active blog. And how many of you before walking into this room had never heard of Protect Young Eyes before? All right. How many of you had been on our website before walking into this room? Anybody? A couple of you, all right. Some of these staff members who are involved in us being here, I'm glad that you went to our website at some point. That's fantastic. It's the primary way to get a hold of us to register for these talks. And so, but as we work through these things, I want to let you know that we are actively writing. I'm going to speak a little bit to some of the ways you can receive our content. We have a newsletter, a monthly newsletter. We are constantly posting on Instagram and other social media platforms with helpful tips and tricks. You see some examples of that in our presentation this evening. We have an active blog. Again, this is an example of one of those when Snapchat most recently updated the parental controls. We wrote a blog about it. In fact, we were given access to the parental controls before they were released so that we could review them and give our report on them before they made their final determination. And so at Protect Young Eyes, we have some pretty strong stances. Based upon everything that we've seen, all of the studies that are out there, looking at the neurological development of the pre-adolescent brain, we are convinced that kids are not ready for smartphones before high school. Like, well, so my sixth grader has a phone, and now you're telling me this now, thanks a lot, where were you before Christmas when we just got it for her, right? I don't want you to think that you are doing harmful things to your kids, but if you aren't willing to set up some safety precautions within the device and have an agreement in place already, then you are going to be giving access to your child and your child access to content that would cause you to shudder as a parent. And so we think the delay is the way. We also don't think that, again, the way that the brain develops, that the adolescent brain is really ready for the stresses and anxieties that come along with social media. We say 15 because if we said the age, we actually thought no one would believe us or implement it, because we think it's older than 15. COPA, the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, requires you to be at least 13 upon account creation. But when I poll middle school students who are under the age of 13 or elementary school students and say, how many of you have Snapchat? When it's over 30% and you have to be at least 13 to have Snapchat, we know that we have a problem. Most of us would not want to instruct our kids to say, you know what, I just want to let you know in life the rules really don't apply to you. Try that once and then let them use that phrase on you when you're trying to enforce some rules in your house. Dad, you told me that the rules don't always apply to me, and so I'm going to reject these instructions that you have given to me at this time. Yet, unknowingly, that's kind of what we're allowing. So you know what, it's okay. As long as you really want Snapchat and all of your friends have it, it's okay to just create an account that you have to lie about your age to get access to. And so, to put it more succinctly, no middle school child is a better version of themselves, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, because of the presence of social media in their lives. Now, are there certain benefits? Absolutely. Do the benefits outweigh some of the harms? You're going to have to make an argument to convince me of that. I'm not saying it can't be made, I'm saying that it's going to be very difficult to make it. When you look at the neurological, in fact, we do an entire 90-minute presentation on mental health alone. and we dive deep into the neurological development of the brain and the parts of the brain that are working together and how all these different systems within the brain are impacted through the use of social media and some of the different things that are going on here. And what we have found and what studies have shown is after about 2 to 3 hours of being in front of a screen, anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation, the trends skyrocket. And during COVID, the average amount of time for our students on screens was 9 to 12 hours a day. And if mental health starts to decline after about 3 hours, can you imagine what quadruple that does? It's no wonder that we kind of came out of all of this isolation and all this stuff kind of in a, I would say, mentally in a worse off spot. And that's not just adults, that's our kids as well. So we also realize that for some of you, this ship has sailed. Your kids have everything. They got everything when they were 5, 6, 7 years old. You haven't put out any setting protections or those kinds of things. And you're like, okay, Doug, how do I put toothpaste back in the tube? We're going to talk through some of that. Some of it you're not going to be able to do without some very difficult conversations. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do in your home because you know your kids better than I do. And it's my parenting philosophy that you are the primary influencers in the lives of your kids. Whether by your presence or your absence, your role is a primary influence in the lives and the development of your kids. No amount of education or incredible programming is going to replace the giftedness that you have and the passion that you have for your kids. So when you said no, we're all anti-tech. Like, Doug, this is exactly what we think. Like, well, that's not quite where I'm at. We're not. Our presentations don't end with us all putting our iPhones in the circle and burning them. All right, that's not what we're all about. All right, we are actually a pro-tech company, but we're also more a slow-tech philosophy when it comes to bringing our kids along with technology. So whether you said no, slow, or go, the ubiquity of technology demands that we need to have conversations with our kids, do some role playing, preparing them for the access and the content they're going to be engaging with, whether in your presence or when they're with friends and away from you. So we're going to spend most of our time working through a digital trust framework. And so this is something that, as you look on your note sheet, and did anybody not get a note sheet or pen when you came in? We've created these things to give you a little bit of a break. You have to write everything down because when was the last time that you wrote for 90 minutes straight? You're going to get hand cramps 7 to 10 minutes in, and then you're going to be done for the count, right? None of us hand write anything anymore. So we create these things for you to jot some stuff down, but give you some stuff already in there. And so how many of you, as your parenting philosophy or your approach is a whole lot more, you want to control everything? How many of you are the control freaks in the room? Anybody? Come on. It's okay. This is your chance to control the room for a little bit. All right? How many of you are kind of the, whatever, parents? Okay? All right? The rest of you are liars. No. I tend to, by nature, I tend to be on this side of things. If the pendulum is going to swing in an error in one way, I'm more this way. And so, but we found that as we're trying to work hard in the middle, this is what we spend our time on, is what do we do to create trust and digital trust within our homes? Some of our activities that we're doing, the way that we're engaging our kids, is actually eroding the trust that we may have already built with them. Sometimes it'll show itself in the questions of, Dad, don't you trust me? Come on, not everybody's doing stupid stuff on their phones. Come on. And all this stuff, and we're eroding that trust with our kids. And in fact, we end up using techniques and things that are spying on our kids. And I have no problem with you monitoring and filtering your kid's device, but tell them that you're doing it. Because if you're secretly doing stuff behind the scenes on their technology, guess what? You're teaching them to do secret things behind your back on their technology as well. So it becomes a game of cat and mouse. Well, I'm going to try to catch you doing stuff, but I'm going to try to do stuff to make it so you can't catch me doing it. Instead of having open and honest conversations saying, hey, we know that there's junk out there. Can we just all admit and agree that it's there? We believe that if it's good enough for you, it's good enough for us. So these protections that we're putting on your device, some of them are also on our devices. And we're going to talk through some of those things. But that spying Is that monitoring without their knowledge? Or maybe you're trying to control everything. You're working from a position of fear that somebody is going to take your kid or do something, your kid's innocence and be robbed from them before you believe that they're ready to handle some of this content. Whatever the case may be, and you're kind of hovering over them, so you're kind of that annoying side. Some of you, it's like, you know what, I grew up, we made it through, we all had our stuff, and it was all okay, and I turned out all right. And so you're passive, you maybe are, I don't want to know about it, I want to choose my ignorance, I'm just going to stick my head in the sand, I don't understand it, I don't have the time to figure it out. And so we kind of avoid the hard work of creating digital trust within our families. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is these 5 C's: copy me, co-play, curiosity, conversation, and coaching. So as we get into this, copy me, this is that kind of reflective, kind of look in the mirror part of this. Would I want my kids using their technology the same way that I use mine? Where I use it, how I use it, what I use it for. How are we modeling the behaviors? If you have, in our household, JD and Silas, they don't have phones yet. They're 7 and 4. JD will be 5 next month. They don't need them. All right? So they don't have them. My older kids, as they got older, we got them for them. You know, they're in marching band, they're this, that, and that. They have all these other different activities. They go to work. They're doing these different things. So we wanted to be able to have a way for them to connect with us. Because, honestly, where are the payphones anymore, right? I found my niche in high school on the stage. So a lot of after-school rehearsals. And after school was done, before I had my driver's license, after the rehearsal was done, I would go to the payphone at my school because there's a whole bank of them. How many of you had a whole bank of payphones at your school, in the high school? Yeah, for me, there's like 5 or 6 payphones. I just go up to one of them. And again, I'm a pastor's kid, and the oldest was 6. So there weren't just dollars and quarters just laying around all over the place for me to make phone calls every day. So I would call my parents collect. And you're like, well, Doug, don't you know that that's kind of more, well, this is how we would do it. You know, 0, my parents' digits. And then you know that it was like, when you do the collect number, it's like, okay, you state your name, they record your name, and say, Doug, pick me up. And so then my home phone number would get a phone call from, the collect call from, Doug, pick me up. And they would decline it, get in the car and come pick me up. Right? Well, we don't have that ability to be able to do that anymore, right? So we want access to our kids. We want them to know that if they're in trouble, they can get access to it. That doesn't mean that when we upgrade our phone, that we just give them our own one. And so our older kids, as they got phones, Ryan, in Cheyenne, we got them track phones early on. Cheyenne would use it. Ryan was totally embarrassed to take that out of his bag at the marching band practice. I would get random phone calls at 4:30 p.m. from calls, well, not random, I knew who he was. I didn't have the number stored in my contacts because it was his buddies. He was borrowing their phones to call me because he was absolutely not going to take that track phone out of his backpack and call his parents. Right? He wouldn't be caught dead with that, right? But it was okay if you're going to have a device, and when you finally got a smartphone, it's like, okay, cell phones that are connected to the internet do not go to bedrooms and bathrooms. 2 of the 5 most dangerous places for kids to be online. Chris mentioned 2 of the other ones in his testimony. Friend's house, school bus. The 5th one is grandma and grandpa's house. When you think of bedrooms and bathrooms, where do your kids feel the most safe in all the world? Their bedroom. So if we add an internet-connected device into the bedroom, and they already feel safe that nobody can get them, they may be more susceptible to higher risk activities. Or the bathroom. We're adding an internet-connected video camera to the room where they're most commonly sexually exposed. And saying, make wise choices. And so, for us, they go to bedrooms and bathrooms. And there'd be times when Ryan, I'd come, his bedroom is in the basement of our, do you guys have basements in Georgia?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't, because at some point it becomes either too wet or too rocky. And in Florida, it's too wet. Like where I live now, you get about 5 people of the service and your hole's going to fill with water because Florida's really just a landfill. And it's barely above sea level everywhere. But so his bedroom was in the basement. I went downstairs one time and he was laying across the threshold of his bedroom door, 15 feet from a very comfortable couch. laying on the floor, waist down in his bedroom, waist up out in the living room where his cell phone was. He wanted to be in his room but wanted to obey the rules, and so the cell phone wasn't in it, but part of him was. And I'm like, dude, our basement is a concrete floor with a little bit of padding and carpet. The couch is way more comfortable. But he wanted to have some of that, but he was like, okay, I'm going to follow the rules. But again, if we're going to have these rules in our home, it's okay, well, they could ask me, well, Dad, why do you have your cell phone in your room? Well, at the time I was a minister, we could get phone, people don't need their minister only between 9 and 5. You get those phone calls at 2 in the morning, you need somebody at the ER, or whatever the case may be. So we had to explain that, why the rules were going to be different, and in what regard and concept. So we need to ask that question. Do we want them using the same like the way we do? Your kid comes from school, you guys, the school year just started back up again over Christmas break, and they're talking to you about stuff that's going on. And you're on your phone looking for a recipe for the Christmas cookies that you make every year. You're like, how come I can't remember how to make this? I've done this 100 times. And they're talking to you about stuff, and you're like, yep, and you're scrolling through, you're listening, but you're really just wanting to find that recipe. And then you're having a conversation with your kid, and they're on their phone, and they're, yep, and then you're really accepting of them doing that, right? Oh, you're not? I mean, look at me when I'm talking to you. Put that down. And some of us, our kids would have every right to say, you first. So how are we as parents modeling the kind of behavior we want to see replicated in our kids? A really good friend of Protect Young Eyes who tragically passed away a couple of years ago, his name is Colin Karchner. He would give talks similar to what we do, and he would say, showing your kids you love them is 2% effort and 98% just putting down your phone. Like, it really is this simple. Just put it down and give you the attention, right? In fact, USA Today wrote an article, a communications time bomb, likening our use of smart technology to the secondhand smoke of a generation before. Our kids are picking up how we use technology, and their assumptions and their behaviors and patterns are mirroring many times the assumptions, behaviors, and patterns of their parents. And so we need to realize that, in fact, in this article, there's this quote, regular quality interactions with parents, talking, listening, singing, reading, and playing together, fuel children's language development and their acquisition of communication skills. In fact, there's an amazing study that if you just go to YouTube and search still face experiment, I highly recommend that you do that. And just kind of see this, in this video, this psychologist, I can't remember, psychologist or psychiatrist, he does this study where he has a mom, in this particular video, engaging with baby. And it's all that mirroring behavior. Like, when you look at a baby, you have to smile and make stupid noises that you never make to any other person in the world. With babies, they just bring it out of us, right? And we're talking in high-pitched voices, and we're doing all these other different things, and we're smiling, and they're responding like, oh, this is the most amazing thing, right? And then you take out, in the experiment, okay, now they take out the phone and put it in front of their face. And the reason why it's a still face experiment is because many times when you're scrolling through your Instagram feed, you're just still facing. You're not responding and engaging with your environment here, you're responding to this, and you're just rolling and scrolling through. Maybe you smile, maybe like, oh, ha, 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 those kinds of things, but that's about it, but you're not engaged. And then it's also a physical barrier. Now baby can no longer see mom. And you watch in a short period of time, baby going from very satisfied and affirmed to dejected and crying. Our kids, their neurological development needs FaceTime, and that's not the Apple video conferencing call platform. They need to see our faces. They need to engage that face-to-face communication. In fact, the World Health Organization, the American Academy of Pediatrics, others, when they've done studies on the neurological development of children, when it comes to screens and those kinds of things, the influence that that has, there's some things that they kind of agree on. One, almost no sedentary screen time between 0 and 2 years old. Less is always, most always best. And then this last one is this copy making, how adults use tech impacts how they use tech. And so when it comes to that tech use, we want to challenge you to think through this toxic trio. When you combine bedroom darkness and boredom, you are in a high-risk environment. Whether you're 4, 14, or 40, it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, and you're going to scroll through stuff, you're laying in bed, everybody's asleep. This doesn't have to be just porn stuff. This could be anything. Maybe what the right thing to do would just be to go to sleep. And yet all of a sudden we find ourselves an hour and a half later, we know so much more about things that are not going to impact our life in any meaningful way. And all we've done is ruined what could have been a really full good night's sleep. I usually feel that way as a Detroit Lions fan, and also as a Michigan Wolverine fan, who had to watch the team that beat them be treated like a junior high football team earlier this week. And I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I think we could have, we may not have beat y'all, but we at least could have put up double-digit points. Maybe. I don't know. And so we have these things, but when we consider this environment, and then when we think, okay, if we let our kids bring their smart tech into their rooms, and it's unmonitored, and they go to bed, I'll ask kids, how many of you sleep with your cell phone in your bedrooms? A ton of them. Adults, absolutely. Students, the number's even more than you guys. And this is 3rd through 5th graders that we're asking. Over a third of them will say, not only do I have my cell phone in my bedroom all night, but there have been times I've been up all night on my cell phone. And again, that's part of feeding into the neurological development. Our kids need rest. So there's a couple of short little videos like this from Chris. This is some of the kind of the content that you would get from our Instagram account. But again, this is how he kind of approaches this copy me concept.
Maybe you've seen me post recently about our Delay is the Way campaign, which is best summarized by our digital trust framework. Friends, we build bridges of digital trust between us and our kids, one brick at a time, slowly and intentionally. The first part of digital trust is copy me. Would you want them using their technology just like you? Where you use it and how you use it? 3 words to help you think about copy me. Number 1, modeling. Friends, if a filter is good for their phone, then it's probably good for yours. If they can't have tech in their room, then you shouldn't have it in your room either. Number 2, announcing. Tell them your intentions. I'm going to take this call, but then I'll be done and get right back with you. And then number 3, asking. This is what I call the post with permission rule. In other words, if you're going to take a picture and post it of your kids online, then ask their permission. Get their consent. There you go. Copy me, friends. That's the first part of digital trust, because delay is the way is not a no-tech strategy. It's a slow tech strategy.
How many of you have ever considered consent when posting pictures and videos of your children on your social media platforms? When we first started talking about this, like, man, that should make so much sense. Because what's happening, when we talk to students, we talk to them about their digital footprint. You need to be mindful of your digital footprint. In fact, our middle school and high school presentations, our high school presentation has a digital footprint video where we challenge them to think, okay, consider digital footprint. The things that you're posting today will be searchable and findable when you're 80 years old. It will impact the schools you get into. It will impact the scholarships. It will impact the jobs, or whatever the case may be. It's going to impact that. So you need to be mindful of that. But our kids, if they don't have smartphones, so many of them still already have a digital footprint because we have been posting content of them for years. And so now they're 14, 15, 16 years old, and there are images and videos of all of the really just embarrassing developmental stages of their life. And they're like, Mom, Dad, can you please take that stuff down? It's really hurting my street cred seeing that picture of me when I sneezed and a Cheerio came out my nose. Right? He's like, oh, I know, but it was so cute. I know, Mom, please, just take it down. Right? And so we have these kinds of things that are going on. So we have copy. The next one is co-play. And this is one of those things we considered, okay, we're modeling the kind of behavior we want to see replicated in our kids. Now we also need to be engaging with them, these shoulder-to-shoulder activities. Because if all of our conversations with our kids are like, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, but we're never saying, hey, this is how we can do this, and let me join you in this. Jade and Sas have a very limited amount of screen time in their life. They get 1 hour of showtime Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. An hour, that's it. And then Monday through Thursday, they spend time playing Mario Kart on Dad's iPad with Dad. And when Dad travels, guess who gets to play Mario Kart with the boys? Mom. And she hates him. She doesn't get it. She's never enjoyed video games. She thinks they're dumb, a waste of time. I'm like, it's like, sweetheart, all of your arguments against video games are absolutely valid. You want to play the next round? And because our kids need to see that this isn't something that's always negative, that there are positive ways to engage in this and to do these things. And I, again, as a youth pastor for 12 of the 15 years that I was a minister, one of my most favorite times with students was road trips. Because if any of the kids wanted to sit up toward the front of the van or the bus and talk with me, we had the common distraction of the open road. And we could look at the open road and just their mouths would just open up. Just talking about a ton. I would learn more about kids in a 45-minute drive to an amusement park than I would in 2.5 years of weekly youth group events, because they just would open up. We had something we could do, and that's the same thing with my kids and with your kids, that we can have this together, we can enjoy this together, and pick whatever it is, the thing that you're going to share doing tech with. Maybe it's it's like, hey, I saw this YouTube video I thought you'd really like, or your kid's like, hey, there's this YouTube channel that I found out that I think it's something you'd really like. It's about honey making, and I have no idea if you'd like it or not, but it sounded like it was kind of your lane, Dad. And we found out, oh my goodness, how bees make honey is one of the most interesting things I've ever learned about. You're right, kid. And now you're spending a lot of time watching YouTube videos on honey, right? Whatever the case may be, these kinds of things, understanding how our kids use technology by doing it with them is a wonderful window into their heart. And for those of you that do have gaming kids, we need to realize that there's some helpful things. We have an entire blog post on this. But to kind of consider some of these helpful tips when it comes to your kids' interaction and engagement with games. Excuse me. One, we need to realize that these games are made for the purpose and intention of addiction. So really, this is not a battle against you and your child. This is a battle between your child's brain and the game. And just be mindful of that. Let them know, hey, the reason why you want to keep playing this is because they have created a legally addictive substance and given it to you for free. And when we look at this, again, the way that the dopamine and all the other different things that are going on, this is their way of being able to get it. And so what's hard is with social media platforms, some of these games, is they say, yeah, we really care about the neurological development of our kids. And they can say that all they want, but the investors want their stock prices to go up. So how do you sell a product that is free and make a multi-billion-dollar company out of it? Well, you collect the information and you sell it to the highest bidder through ads and other research institutions to know how these things are being used. And so we no longer have a physical economy, it's an economy of our attention. And so the only way for us to make more money is to get your eyes on it more, and to get your eyes on it more, we need to create a product that calls and drives you to want to use it more. So the end goal is to help the investors, but ultimately what it ends up doing to our kids is create a legally addictive substance. And so we need to just have open conversations with our kids. Hey, you want to know why it's really hard for you to focus and you spend a lot of time playing that? It's because this is what's going on inside your head. You just talk to your kids in age-appropriate ways about that. This is Chris and one of his kids. Again, just doing tech together. They're doing different things, but they're next to each other. This is one of those things he's playing with. And because I know his son and I know this how my kids, hey Dad, do you see this? Hey, look at this. Look what I just did here. There's an engagement, interaction. Oh man, that's awesome. That's amazing. Hey, you should go show Mom. Well, she isn't here. I know we should go show her anyway. Right? We just have these conversations with our kids. And with co-play, realizing this is that technology is a we activity, is a shared activity.
From a very young age, I want our kids to know that every internet-connected device is co-owned. That means when they're little kids, we don't buy them their devices, we buy devices that we let them use. For your tween son or daughter, maybe you get them a hot pink Amazon Kindle, you name the Kindle Dad's and Lauren's Kindle, so that she knows there's nothing to hide. Technology is a we activity and not just a me activity. When your son or daughter is ready for a smartphone, aren't I an amazingly kind, benevolent parent that I'm letting you use this device while you're here in the house? And even if you decided to pay for it yourself, whenever we have something that powerful here in the house, we're going to figure out together how I can still be involved. Because whether you are 4, 14, or 40, one-on-one with the internet, we eventually all lose. And trust me, that conversation with your teen son or daughter is a whole lot easier if you plant the seed early. We do tech together.
We have now listened to 50 minutes of me talk about stuff. I'm going to give you a little mental break. Any questions that you have that you want to ask at this point? If not, we'll move on. I just want to give you kind of a mental break and maybe to process and ask any sort of questions. I'll give you some time at the end. And I like to say I'm usually the second to last person who leaves a room, only followed by the person shut the door and turn off the lights. So I am here for you. So I'll stay as late as they'll let us stay afterwards. Obviously, we're going to end on time. But if you want to stay and ask more questions afterwards, I want to let you know I'm here and not annoyed by your questions. All right? I'm here to serve you. All right? I didn't come all this way to not help you. All right? Yeah.
First of all, this is super helpful. So thank you. My mind is like, but I would like to burn all phones, so if we could just like decide as a parent.
Yeah, get a committee together and next
After this,
Thursday at
we're
6.
done. No, I was going to ask two things if it's helpful at this point. One, we use bark in our
Yep.
household, and so I wondered like your thoughts of sort of using, and we had the conversation of putting something on their devices, and we got told that it was on there. So I appreciate you sort of like affirming that that's important.
No, absolutely.
So one, is that tool helpful? And then the other question I have is maybe not related to answer to get no big deal, yeah, but I mean, I still feel like it's helpful to say, like, I am an adult, and so I could use my phone in a way that you can't, right? So like, I get the modeling and the co-ownership, but like, I could drive a car, and my kids can't drive a car, or I could vote, and they can't be allowed to vote yet. So is there also a time and a place when you sort of say, like, you can't have this in your space, but I'm, an adult. And for me, for my work, or even if it's not a past or emergency situation, it's just like, I'd like to have my phone as my alarm. I guess, is there a time when like the sort of modeling stops and you can sort of just say, like, I'm an adult, here's my house, and, our lives differ at this point?
Absolutely. So I'll hit both of those things. One, we will talk about BARC. We're actually the largest affiliate of BARC in the world. Titania Jordan is the chief family officer at BARC. That mama is a bulldog when it comes to protecting and wanting to help out other families and protecting kids. She's awesome. We've done a lot of work with BARC. And so we're going to talk about that as one of the possible solutions. So to bring that up, absolutely. And in fact, if you look on the back page of your packet, there's a number of QR codes, and I believe BARC is one of them. And so you scan that, that'll get you our access code to some rates that only affiliates can offer, those kinds of things, and there's a variety of other things. But yeah, BARC absolutely is one of those pieces to the puzzle. It never replaces a parent, but it can be a tool in the parent's toolbox. Absolutely. The second part, absolutely, there are things that are going to be allowable. So the way that it went with, I'll put it this way, I'm going to talk about this when we get to the coaching section. It'll be easier to do that, because we'll get to some of that in just a second. And if we get to the end and you're like, Doug, you still didn't answer my question, ask it again, and I'll do my best to help. Yeah?
Do you have any thoughts about how they can have music in their room without their phones?
Yeah, that's
That's
just
going to be a big argument.
yeah, a Bluetooth speaker that isn't Alexa. Just a Bluetooth speaker. That's how my kid listens to audiobooks. We used to have a Bluetooth speaker in the room. He'll sit there, play, do whatever, and that's just sitting in there.
How do they change the music?
They can come out of their room and change it. Or you have, if you want to do a smart speaker, you can do that, whether it's an Alexa or whatever you have within your home, and say, hey, play whatever. If it's, it's connected to, what's that?
What would be the drawback to the Alexa?
We have an entire, like, if you go onto our website, we have how to set up parental controls on any smart device. And so as long as you're taking the time to set up your Alexa in a way that is for the protection of your kid, go ahead. But don't just drop it in there and say, isn't this cool? You get to do whatever you want on it. Because there's content on Spotify that is allowable to be listened to and to be seen that would not be consistent with some of the other features that you would want available to your child. And if they're going through Spotify to get some of that content through just voice activation and commands, then you aren't setting, again, you're creating an environment that, unless you're going to have those conversations that, hey, if you hear a song that's talking about stuff or singing about stuff, whatever it is that you know is not something we would approve of, we want you to be open and honest about that. We're going to trust you to have this in here, and if you can't trust your kid, then it doesn't go in there. But have the opportunity to build it. And so again, there are some incremental things that I would say we'll get into some of that in the coaching of how, with Cheyenne and Ryan, how we even worked through the App Store in developmental ways once they even had their smartphone. So it wasn't, okay, now you get access to everything. There were things that we set up that were developmental. And was it inconvenient at times? Sure. Was it kind of embarrassing for our son to say, yeah, I can't download an app without my parents' permission? Well, when they're 13 or 14, I think that that's totally fine. Now, if he's the same way, if he's 17 and 18 and that's still the restrictions, I am failing him as a parent because I'm not helping him learn how to say no to stuff that he as a 17 or 18-year-old should absolutely have the integrity to say no to. And that's not even from a faith perspective. That's just, hey, you can do what you're going to do. You need to do the right thing, make the right call. If I can't trust you, if my 17 or 18 do that, that's on me not preparing you for that as a parent. And so we'll get into a little bit more of that. Again, follow-up questions at the end if I didn't quite hit what's helpful for you. All right? Awesome. This is the point of the presentation where we do just a quick little quiz. All right? So, anybody know what this app is?
Among Us.
Among Us. Well done. What does Among Us do?
They post it.
They post stuff? That's probably
Impossible things.
What's that?
It's a game.
Okay, so a game, again, that you can do and you can play with other people. Among Us has a chat feature. Any app that has a chat feature is going to have predatory activity. Where the kids are is where the predators are. All right, so you're mindful. Among Us, what's this one? All right. Discord, all right, I heard someone. Everyone's like, oh good, I'm glad somebody do it. Okay, what's this?
Instagram.
Okay, just read it. Right. So, anybody still not heard of Being Real yet? Go ahead and raise your hand. You have no idea what Being Real is. All right. So, September, October, November, maybe even a little bit of August, going back before that. Be Real was the #1 downloaded app on the App Store. It was like 12, 15 weeks or something like that in a row. Don't feel bad. Most parents have no idea what it is. On our website, we have over 100 apps that we have reviews on. And we are constantly putting, okay, what is it? What was it designed to do? How are students actually using it? What things you need to be aware of? Here's some things in conversation to have with your kids. And just kind of have that so that you can make an informed decision for your kids if you want them engaging with that. All right? So, again, as we go through this, we want to be that, again, this isn't that tongue lash, like, man, Doug, you're really hard on us. No, know that there are resources available. We exist to do the hard work for you. We have an on-staff researcher who regularly, every week, looks at the trends and say, okay, this app was number 19 on the list last week. This week, for some reason, it's 11. Why did it jump 8 spaces in 1 week? How's it being used? What demographic caught onto it? Is it students? How are they using it? Because 2018, 2019, there's an app called Saraha that was really, really popular. Developed in the Middle East for more shame-based cultures, where you would never say anything that could be construed as negative towards somebody, because you wouldn't want to bring shame upon their name or their family name. Totally respectable cultural setting, right? But how do you get an honest review on how you're doing on your job if the whole culture is kind of based around not giving you some of that could be considered harmful to you? But you want honest feedback so you can do your job better. So Saraha was created as a professional platform to be able to get anonymous responses from your employers or other colleagues or others in your field on a variety of different things. All right? Totally appropriate, awesome platform, filled a need and was used by a ton of people. Jumps the pond into the United States and kids get a hold of it, and they don't use it for getting review at work. They get it as a way to give anonymous feedback about other people. They don't do it in a way that is helpful. But I can say whatever I want about you and not be held accountable for it. So it became a bullying app in the hands of kids. And so you're like, again, Saraha came and went. But you're going to be like, okay, what is this? Oh, this looks totally normal. Okay, yeah, cool. You read the app review or the description on the app store, like, yeah, I don't know why my kid even wants this, but that's fine, right? But then you find out, oh, this is actually how it's being used. And so these are things we want you to be informed and engaged and involved with the life of your kids. So this leads into curiosity. So the copy me co-play piece, we got into the curiosity. So this is where we start asking questions. Hey, how many of you, you say to your kids, how many of you have ever had somebody send you an inappropriate picture through messaging on your phone before? Did you know that the number is way higher than what we want to admit? When I ask that question to 3rd through 12th graders, depending on what age group, and they're raising their hands, and the 3rd through 5th graders, they're just like, yep. By the time you get to high school, they're kind of like, I don't want to admit that has happened. But they're all kind of with smirks looking at each other, they all know that it does happen, right? Or, hey, are there any YouTube channels you think I'd be interested in? Or, hey, has everything you didn't know tried to message you? Even if it wasn't inappropriate stuff, anybody just tried to message you. Yeah, well, how did you handle that? What did they say? What do they want to know? And if your kid, again, if they have an app or a game that has a chat feature, you need to be having these conversations with them. And you need to be giving them the tools in their toolbox to know, okay, when that happens, well, look at my style and come and talk to me. Because when you ask that question, it's like, yeah, well, what do they ask? They want to know my name and where I live. What did you tell them? I told them my name and where I lived. If you've never instructed them on how to handle that situation before, you don't get to be upset with your kids. That's one of those looking in the mirror things. Okay, I didn't prep you for this. That's on me. And you need to do your best to keep calm. All right, that means, you know what, sweetheart? I wasn't expecting that answer. If you could just give me a couple of minutes, I'm going to go into my room and cry for a little bit. Right? And then come back out and have the conversation. Because if you blow up on something that they thought was really insignificant, what's the likelihood that they're going to tell you when something actually, in their mind, really bad actually happens? They're not coming to you. If you took the phone, the device from them right away, I can't believe you did that, you didn't tell me. You're grounded for a week. There's no way they're going to be talking to you about anything else. Again, you burned that digital trust with them. So having that, asking those questions, right? If all of your conversations are consequence negative, again, the chance of them talking to you is absolutely zero. And so, how many of you have already had conversations with your kids about porn? Right? What would you say is the right age to start having that conversation with your kid? This is
Earlier than you do.
okay. What's a number? Let's throw out some numbers. What do you think? Okay. How many say 11 sounds right? Go ahead, raise your hand. How many say older than 11? How many say younger than 11? All right, so if we say younger than 11, what's the number?
8, 7, 9,
Okay.
5, 10.
We've actually written a blog post about that. Oh, it's not in this presentation, it's in a different deck. How to talk to your 5-year-old about pornography. The average age of first exposure to pornographic content is 8. That's 3rd grade. Now, Now, again, I've already kind of given an example of how we talk about the concept of saying, hey, have you ever seen any pictures or videos or things that show parts that are usually covered by somebody's swimsuit? Or did you ever see something that, you know, maybe you probably shouldn't be looking at, or you just felt kind of just weird seeing that? Yeah, that stuff is out there. And I want to let you know that that's not helpful for you. It's not showing people respecting each other. It's not helping you to respect yourself. And there's some things that I want, if that happens to you, I want you to put it down and just come and talk to me about it, all right? I want you to know that I know that it's there. You don't need to try to hide that from mommy and daddy. And in fact, there are actually some great resources, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior. The junior version is for like 3 to 6 year olds. And the Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, the non-junior version is like really good for 7 to 10 year olds. To have a book that you just read with them. When we got Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior, when JD was 3, I think he requested that book a dozen times the first week. Like, he just wanted to keep reading that book. And it's a totally age-appropriate way to go about it. Written by an organization that is now called Defend Young Minds. They were used to be Protect Young Minds, but everybody got us confused with each other. And since we existed first, they changed their name to Defend Young Minds. But a great, great resource that's out there. To have these, and again, these don't have to be sit down, look you square in the eye, we're going to have a very serious conversation, right? It can be very lighthearted, but to have an opportunity to have a goal to have at least 10 talks about porn with your kids before they turn 10 years old. So that'd be something that is like, you know what, it's out there. This is not helpful for you, it's actually kind of harmful, it doesn't show people showing love to each other, it doesn't help you. It's just, this is kind of how it is. And so when they're on the school bus and their friend says, hey, look at this, I go, I know what that is, I'm not going to look at it. Because you already prepped them for it. And so when we look at why kids look at pornography, it's the least common reason why kids go to porn is for lustful sexual intent. Most of the time it's curiosity because they heard about it from their friends. With guys, I find it more, it's because they think, okay, everybody that's in the locker room seems to know about this, and I don't know what it is, so I got to keep my street cred, so my identity is attached to this, and so I need to know about this, so I'm not the really innocent kid that doesn't know anything. I find many times that our daughters, it's because there's a lot of expectation of what a relationship looks like, and the guys, the assumptions all the guys are looking at it, and that's what they're expecting from a girlfriend, and so they need to be able to see it so they know how to be in a relationship with a guy, and so it's their value. I want to be loved, I want to be cared for, and this must be the way that happens. And so we have identity and value and a variety of other different things, so it's very rarely is I want to look at something and sexually fantasize about it. It's interesting, it's intriguing. I don't know why I like looking at this. We had one kid say to his dad, I just couldn't put it down through tears. Like, I don't know what happened. Like, all of a sudden, I just couldn't stop watching it. And those are the times you just give our kids a hug and say, I'm sorry. Sorry. And have those conversations with our kids. I have no problem, excuse me, I have no problem with you guys taking cell phones out and taking pictures, scanning. This is a QR code, if you don't know what a QR code is. A QR code is a pixelated image that to your phone it means something. To you it looks like, you know, the old detective books where you had the red magnifying glass you put over and all of a sudden things that were hidden there show up. That's kind of what it looks like to me. But these are the links to these blog posts on our website. So I have no problem with you. Again, I'm here to help you. And if helping you is scanning this, so it's like, hey, I can read that later. Or if you choose to read it the rest of the night. Or you use it as an example, oh, there's a QR code, I can check the scores. And you're doing that on your phone while I look and think that you're checking. I don't care. You're grown adults. Do what you're going to do, all right? So why is curiosity so important? Why is asking these questions so important? Learning how our kids engage with technology. Because if this was available when we were our kids' age, we would be doing the exact same stuff that everybody else is doing. Some of you first saw inappropriate content because a buddy of yours or a family member of yours or maybe your dad or whoever it was had magazines that were hidden, you found them and you brought them to your court. right? And that was when the only place you went out to the woods and you looked in the fort and you knew you had stuff in there, and that was what you did. You didn't know why you liked it, but man, was it fun because it felt wrong and bad, and for some reason, doing bad stuff feels right and good when you're a kid, right? But we need to realize and give our kids a break and just some grace and say, you know what? I can't be so hard on you because if I were your age, I'd be wanting to do the same stuff you are. Now I want to help you as a parent so that we can limit some of this stuff because this really isn't helpful for you. It's teaching you a version of sex that is not going to lead into a healthy, fulfilling sexual relationship in the future. But we can have those kinds of conversations. So, a 7-day rule. So this curiosity, so we ask, hey, what are some of the apps that all of your friends have that you don't have on your phone? You know, that's a question you can ask your kids. What's everybody playing? What's everybody doing right now? What are some of those things? And they're saying, oh yeah, this, or if you had asked back in September, October, be real, that's the whole thing. Yeah, okay, well what is that? I don't know, but it seems like everybody has it. Okay, well let's learn more about it, right? But the 7-day rule, and this goes back to some of that age gating process that we did with our kids. With Shine and Ryan, when they first got their phones, they couldn't download or delete apps on their device without me putting in a PIN. All right, that was part of the screen time settings on an iPhone. So we had it set up that way. You can't download or delete anything without us approving it first. And what that allowed us to do is, one, to screen everything that was on their device before it went on there. But two, it gave us a chance in that screening process to then do our own research, download the app for ourselves, create an account that is similar to the age demographic of our kid, and mess around with it for a week. Because just reading the App Store description is not going to be helpful. Reading our app review is going to be more helpful. But sometimes what you need to do is just to mess around the app yourself and figure it out. And so you say you have a 7-year-old son that's asking to download an app. He's like, okay, well, we're going to wait a week. Submitted your request and want to be super formal about it. Yeah, just let us know. We'll let you know next week. All right, cool. And then you go and you create an account as a 7-year-old boy. And you realize I can't create an account as a 7-year-old because you have to be 13 for this app, or you have to be 17 for this app, whatever the case may be. They're like, okay, bud, I'm sorry, you're not old enough to do that, and so you're going to have to wait until you're of age to be able to do that. Well, all my friends have it. I can't speak for your friends and their parents and how they're handling stuff. In our household here, this is how we're going to handle it. So we're not going to download it right now. And then eventually, it became you could download but not delete. So that our kids aren't downloading stuff at school and at a friend's house and delete it and hope that I don't find it in their download sections and those kinds of things. And so you can download but not delete. And so every now and then, again, we had a digital code of conduct in our home, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, of a digital playbook, of a set of an agreement that you have. If you're going to have a smart device, here's some things we agree about. Where can your technology go? How long can you have it? On what days? If it breaks, who's responsible for it? Well, how are you going to, like all these kinds of things and filling in for you. It's just a blank spot with a lot of spaces. Okay, if you choose, you can have it 24/7, you can download whatever you want, fine, but at least have them sign off saying that this is the agreement. But for us, that's what we did. We had this agreement, and so it was, okay, but then it got to you download and not delete. But in this whole entire process, I had access to my kid's phone whenever I wanted, and they could charge their phones in the living room at night, and I was with their PIN. And so once or twice a week, especially early on, I would just check and I'd look through, okay, what apps are they using, how long are they using it, what kinds of things are they using it for, and if there's anything alarming, I'd screenshot it, send a picture to my phone, and we talk about it later. And not in a hammer kind of a way, but just a curiosity, because maybe there's totally honest and appropriate things. Some of the group text that my son was in, there was stuff that was being sent in language and things that were being talked about. I was like, dude, is this the way that you talk when you're with your friends? And they think that this is how you talk? And there's something you talk about, and so they don't think it's any different? Or are you saying, hey guys, in the group text, can you talk about that stuff amongst yourselves? I just don't need to be in the group text on it. So those are two totally different approaches. If my kid is in the midst of a group text and he's talking about stuff and sharing content that is non-consistent with the way that we've raised them, but that's the way that they're acting at school, then I have a broader conversation to go with my kids. Say, okay, why are you living a double life here? What's going on? Or it's, no, Dad, tell him not to. It's like, okay, cool, cool. Not everybody's gonna hold the same rules that we do. You wanna have engagement with your kids or with your buddies, all right, that's fine. But again, be reminded, these are some things, yeah, Dad, I know I got it. All right, cool, cool. You're doing a great job. Thanks for talking to me about this. Carry on. Again, two totally different approaches. And the only way that I would know that is by asking the question, not assuming that I know the answer already. So I think many times we think that we got our kids pinned, and we know exactly why they're doing stuff, and sometimes we couldn't be farther from the truth. So give them a chance to give a defense for why they're using the stuff that they're using. But then as Shine and Ryan got to 17, 18 years old, they could download and delete apps whenever they wanted. And again, once a week, I would just scroll through, see what's going on, check some of the messages on Snapchat and whatever, just kind of just get a feel for what's going on and see if there's anything that I need to ask more questions about. And that's it. But that was, again, something we agreed to, saying, if you're going to have a device in the house, these are some things we're going to do. We're going to be involved. And some of it came with an apology. Sorry, bud, your dad's considered somebody that as a national speaker on this, and I've researched these things a little bit more than some of your friends' parents have, and so you may feel like you got the short straw on this one, but I'll let you know we're protecting you from so many things. And if there's ever anything that you think that we're just totally out of line on, ask about it. And we'll discuss it. And maybe it's true. This was appropriate for you when you were 13, but now you're 15. There's a rule we're still enforcing that, yeah, we should change that. You're right. And then do it. And then have the things like, no, sorry, this is going to be real. As long as you live in my house, this is it. I'm not budging. These are my reasons. If you want to move out, you can. I think it'd be really weird to move out over this, but we can talk about that, right? So, then there's curiosity that leads to the conversation. Having those conversations with our kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews that nobody had with us when we were growing up. How many of you had any sort of meaningful conversation about either pornography, sexuality, other meaningful kinds of things with your parents? Your parents said, you know what, this is important, we're going to sit down and talk about this. How many of you did not have that talk? Yeah. Most of us, right? I remember my dad sat me down and talked about sex. I was 10 years old, we went to a Detroit Pistons game. Again, I lived in Michigan, Grand Rapids and Detroit, about 2.5 hours away. And so we had to go to the office to get the tickets, and we're pulling into the parking lot, and my dad says, hey, Doug, what do you think about sex? And I couldn't believe my dad had just said that word. I knew that was a bad word, and I was like, it's bad? And then he left me in the car to go get the tickets out of his office, and I just sit there like what? And then he told me that my mom and dad did that? I don't remember the Pistons game. I don't remember the drive there or back. I just remember that about 10-minute window. That's it. And I don't remember any other conversations that my dad had with me about the topic. Until in high school, kind of got a little addicted to porn, and they found out about it, and then obviously we had some more conversations about it. But as we're going through all this, it's like, okay, we need to have those conversations. So with our older kids, Cheyenne, if she has a thought in her head, it's out her mouth. She's just going to ask questions all the time. She just always is asking. And that was really, I loved it. I grew up with 4 sisters, so girl talk doesn't bother me at all. You ask me any sort of question, I'm probably going to defer to my wife because she has a lot more experience being a woman than I do. But if she's going to ask me questions, cool. And so, she gets her first period. That's a question that comes up at the dinner table. And my son Ryan is like, I can't believe we're talking about this. I'm like, well, she has a question. Maybe you want to talk about this without eating food, but it doesn't bother me because I grew up with so many tampons and pads in the trash in my bathrooms growing up. It doesn't bother me at all. It's not that big of a deal. We can talk about it, right? But Ryan's like, can we just can I eat in my room? Like, can we do anything else but this, right? There's one time she's at the dinner table. She's like, Dad, I said, what's that? We were at the dinner table. I was working on my laptop in the living room. She comes to me and she's like, Dad, what's up, sweetheart? She goes, what's erectile dysfunction? I said, okay. You want to know? Yeah. And okay. Do you know what dysfunction is? No, sorry, these are the 2 terms, right? You know what dysfunction means? She's like 13 or 14. She joined our family when she's 12. This is, a year or 2 into her being in our family. And she's asking Dad the question. All right, cool. So dysfunction, something doesn't function, doesn't work the way that it's intended to, right? Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Sir, do you know what an erection is? And she looks at me, with a kind of a smirk that I can tell she thinks that she might know, but she doesn't quite want to kind of offer her thoughts at this point without hearing from Dad first. And she's like, no? Okay, well, 3 hours on a man's penis. She goes, hold on a second. She ran out of the room. Way to go, Dad. Not even a minute later, she comes back to the room with the teddy bear, sits on the couch next to me with the teddy bear, puts the teddy bear in her lap, plugs the teddy bear's ears and says, okay, go ahead. And we talked about it, right? And so it's just one of those things that I wanted my son and daughter to know that they could always ask me any question and we would talk about it. I worked tirelessly and I failed so many times, but my goal was to be the top 3 resource that my kids went to when they had a question. I knew Google was going to be something that was going to be on the list, or YouTube. I knew friends were going to be on there, but I wanted to be in that. I wanted my voice and my instruction to be part of when they're first trying to figure some things out, so I can help them set some defaults and a standard of understanding. So when they hear other views, they can say, yeah, but what about this? And they can start thinking through some of those things. My son Ryan, again, not many times growing up did he ask me questions. Now as an adult, he's learned that Dad knows things. He was really convinced I didn't know anything when he was in high school and middle school. The funny thing was, his friends thought that I did, and they would come and ask me because I was a lot of his friends' youth pastor. And so they would come and ask me questions, but to him, I didn't know anything. And I understood that was part of the deal. But he's kind of gotten to the point, he's asking me questions about something. Dad, I'm thinking about this right. Hey, there's this girl. All right, well, tell me about her. What's up? How'd you meet her? What's going on? All this stuff. Oh, her name is Lucy. Okay, tell me about Lucy. She's a sweetheart, right? And so all these things we're talking through. But we've gotten to that stage, but man, there were some times that it was brutal growing up, right? But have these conversations with our kids. And it's going to feel really awkward at first. I promise you, you'll get better with it. All right? So, again, here's the question. So it was just I was a couple slides ahead. Again, so you know the answer to this. 5. You want to read our blog post on it? How to talk to a 5-year-old about porn? Yeah, you go ahead. You have young kids, you're like, you know what? We haven't talked about this. If you're saying 3rd grade is the average age of first exposure, I have a 5th grader, it's possible that he or she's already seen this, and just didn't know how to talk to us about it. So here's some things that we can do to kind of help through that. And you can develop whatever you want. Just because we think one way doesn't mean it's the only way. But here's at least some helpful things for you to consider when having that conversation. And so whether it becomes that porn is the norm or not, let it be something that it's not as taboo of a conversation as what it has been, and it was for us growing up. Take some of the mystery out of it, and some of that. While it is inappropriate, we have found, while porn is inappropriate, hard stuff, we have found that talking about it does not build or create curiosity to go and to look at it. So if that's your fear, I want to let you know that the research shows that that is not as common of a correlation as you might be afraid that it is. It's all about how you handle it and how you talk about it. All right? Again, put it down and tell someone. So maybe you found and you're sitting there like, I came to this because our son or daughter is addicted to porn. This is something that we know that we're wrestling with and struggling through right now. Maybe the school administrators or counselors, they know, yeah, this is a big deal in the school. We're trying to help it, we're trying to do everything we can, we're trying to set up filters and all those kinds of things and all the devices, but again, they're always going to try to find ways around it. And so, but this is something that we're dealing with. There are some times and some helpful tips when it comes to that. Maybe your child's behavior is becoming excessive. Maybe they're not getting sleep, they can't seem to stop. Their preferences are becoming really obscure or hardcore, or maybe illegal, whether it's of other children, whatever the case may be. Your child is engaging in sexual activities with people they're meeting online, whether it's in-person meeting up with or sending sexually explicit photos of each other. In most states in the country, if you are a minor exchanging sexually explicit images, if you produce, are in possession of, or distributing CSAM, child sexually explicit material, right? When we are, there are felonies and misdemeanors in every state in our country tied to that. Again, that's part of why we're working with lawmakers, because a lot of the laws were written with guys like me forcing kids to take pictures, not like me, but my age and my demographic, taking pictures of kids and exchanging them. They were written in the late 90s, early 2000s, not thinking of smart technology at the time. So how does a judge rule when a third grader is sending pictures to a fifth grader within a school of themselves? How do you work with that? If you go by the letter of the law, it's a felony or misdemeanor. It could be, again, creation, possession, distribution. So I say to kids in the high school talks, if you've ever taken an inappropriate picture of yourself, ever, you're guilty, and it's still on your phone, you're guilty of 2 of them. If you ever sent it to anybody, you're guilty of the 3rd. And so if there's still stuff on your device, I highly encourage you to delete it and to not do this again. If you want to wait till you're an adult and that's a decision you make at that time, fine. I want to let you know, as a minor, it is illegal. Maybe it's time that they see a counselor. I want to let you know that if you say, you know what, my kids need to talk to somebody, I don't feel equipped to handle some of this, you need to be involved as a parent, be that greatest cheerleader. But I want to let you know you are not failing as a parent if your child is getting counseling. That is not a knock upon your ability to raise your kid. In fact, I would say you're working from a position of strength, saying, I'm willing to do anything possible to give my child the help that they need. In fact, talk to some people. Talk to the counselors within the school year. Maybe they can meet with your child, or maybe they can recommend somebody that your child can meet with that's outside of the situation. Whatever the case may be, but don't let your fear of what people think about you as a parent cause you to not provide for your kid what they desperately need. Another blog post, tricky people. This is, again, the term that we used about online strangers, right? Stranger danger, digital age. This is one of those things that, again, as we think through this, for some of us growing up, if we saw somebody at the park in a white van with no windows giving away puppies and ice cream to kids, we're going to call the local police and say, hey, can you just scroll by, Martin Luther King Park, because it just seems shady, right? It's not so easy now. I'll ask kids questions. I'll put a picture up of a middle school age kid and say, hey, does anybody know this kid? No. How old do you think this kid is? Oh, maybe 12, 13, 14. Yep. Can anybody have this picture as their profile picture? Some of the kids will say no, because it's not them. But well, no, actually, you can. And so if I created a profile, and I have this a picture, and this is my profile picture, and you thought that you were talking to a kid, am I a kid? No. I'm old, right? And I don't want them to answer yes, but they always do, right? I can have this, and so if you don't know them off the internet, you don't talk to them on the internet. If someone does, what do? And we haven't practiced back there. I'll split up the room, this side, when I point to them, they'll say, put it down, and they'll do a hand gesture, put their hand on they'll put it down, and then I point to the side, and they'll put their hands up and say, tell someone. We'll go back and forth, we start to whisper. And we get to the point where they're just shouting at the top of their lungs. That's like their favorite part of the talk, because they never are allowed to shout, right? They get a chance and it's okay, right? But to have that, to give them that idea, to put it down and to tell someone. Get another helpful tip.
A really important phrase that you can give your kids is this. Honey, if something feels weird, then it probably is. This is a really great phrase, whether in the digital life or in real life. Give kids permission to follow through. They know what you mean when you say to them, you know when you get that little funny feeling in your stomach? Something just doesn't feel right? Say to them, honey, if it feels weird, then it probably is. That means when you're talking to somebody online, or somebody sends you something, or you ever see something, both in real life and in your digital life, honey, if it feels weird, then it probably is. Give your kids that permission. And then when they feel that, tell them exactly what to do. Put it down and tell someone. And give them a list of someone's, you, a brother, a sister, somebody, an adult who can help them so they know exactly what to do.
So does your child know beyond any doubt that he or she can land softly with you. They know that the world could turn against them. Mom and dad will always have their back. If not, start now affirming those truths. Lastly, we'll do this quickly because of time, coaching. Again, this isn't just parental controls, it's about caring controls. And getting them to the point where we get an agency saying, hey, here's some of the rules. What are some of the good rules in our house should be? Well, there shouldn't be any. Okay, well, that's off the table. So what are some of the rules you think that there should be? And take into consideration some of those things. Have them help you set up the parental controls on your router at home. And then also say, Bud, I need for you to show me also how to change the password before we're done with this, because I'm going to do that, because right now you know the password, and you could log in and change all the stuff that we just did, and I have no idea what we just did, I have no idea how to change it, but bring them into the process. Any rule that they help us create is a rule they're more bound to obey. And then, again, we'll skip this video, but, I want to go to this right here. This is our digital trust playbook. There's I believe, a QR code in your note guide. Again, this is just that paperwork, that document that you can create, have everybody who has a smart device sign it individually. We have hosted a number of kids in our home over the years, and any kid that lived under our roof had to fill one of these things out and sign it, and their parents did too. Because if their parents didn't give me permission to enforce this stuff while I was letting like one of the families in our church, Dad took a civilian job on a military base in South Korea during the senior year of one kid. He didn't want to move to South Korea his senior year, so he lived with us. And I was like, if I don't have any teeth in my enforcing of how things are going in my house, he can go with you. And so they signed it, and there were some difficult parts to all of that. I was like, this is something that I have to protect my family, and I'm not going to let an outsider bring some of those things into my home that I've worked so hard to protect. And he lived with us for an entire school year. He did. I mean, he lived with it. It was fine. It was good. It was great. But this was something that we developed for those kinds of things. So, coaching. When we get to the practice, finding the right hardware. If you don't love your router, then maybe it's time to consider some of the options that are out there. We have found that the best router developer right now is Griffin. All right? They have 3 different routers. This one here is the tower. If your house is under like 1,500 square feet, if it's a little bit more than that, 1,800 square feet, this will be fine. If it's under, then this one you may want to do a couple. This is the Guardian. So this one actually will probably get up to 2,500 square feet if you just do one of them. These ones are the Guardians, and then this one here is the newest one, the AX. All great resources. There is, you can see here, this is the module and app on your device that you can then control all of how devices, how long they can be on. You can shut down the internet to individual devices, all those kinds of things. And like people have what if they go off the Wi-Fi? If you have a good cell signal and a wired and unlimited data plan, having the Wi-Fi is great, but that doesn't protect from everything. I agree, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But Griffin, again, we love what they're doing. Some of the parental controls and settings within their hardware and software on their router almost makes it so you don't need some of the other software options out there because of what they're able to do within their platform as well. So we say, okay, no smartphones before high school, then well, how do I get access to my kid? We think Gab Wireless has created the best product that's out there. Now, Bark just recently came out with some wearable tech, and they do a great job. We want to test it a little bit more before we put larger stamp of approval on their tech, but we have no reason to doubt that it's going to be fantastic. But Gab Wireless is a way to have a non-internet smartphone, non-social media. The watch, I think, for your upper elementary school kids, awesome. I will probably be getting one of these for JD on his next birthday when he turns 8 in June. This will be one of his birthday presents and say, hey, this is that progression. It'll be a way for us to be able to text him. There's some default text that he can have. There's GPS on there, ways so we know where they are, all those kinds of things, right? And then once they get to, into middle school, that non-iPhone or Google Android phone, their cell phone. It's a full screen, touch screen phone, looks like everybody else's, doesn't have all the features. Great option out there. All right, so these are some of those things that if hardware is one of those things you're trying to wonder, what do we want to do? What do we want to provide our kids? Then these are some of those great solutions when it comes to routers and then devices. If software is kind of the thing that you're looking at, here's some of the software platforms that we think that combining them or using some of the features is excellent. So anybody know what this is? That's screen time. So that's the parental control settings on any Apple device. You want to know how to set up an Apple device? Chris referenced it. It is over 30 steps on how to set up an Apple device. We have every step set up on our website. You go to our devices, go to iOS, and it shows it. It's screenshots. Tap here, swipe here, do this, and all of those kinds of things. All right. We assume that you've never seen an iPhone before when we made our step-by-step. The same is true with Android stuff. We have those settings as well. So speaking of Android, what's this icon? Family Link. That's the parental controls for a Google or an Android device. Again, we have set up guides on all those kinds of things as well. So at a minimum, get the device right within the parental control settings that are already innate within whatever device it is. Covenant Eyes is a kind of an accountability software. Bark, again, we already referenced. Bark, we have found, monitors and social media better than any other platform that's out there. It does become very difficult on an Apple platform because of the privacy protections that Apple has and restrictions of allowing third-party apps to monitor other apps within their app platform. Google, it's open source. Like if you don't want people to be able to monitor it, develop it so it can't. That's kind of their approach to that. Apple is a lot more restrictive in some of those things, but nonetheless, Bark does as well, and I would say better than any other software option when it comes to monitoring those kinds of things. There's been a number of things that they have protected or prevented from their platform. So whatever you choose, my goal and our goal as parents is that we want to provide protection for our kids. We want to have as balanced of an approach as we can. And we want to be prepared to handle some of these things. And that's what Protect Our Eyes exists to do, to provide you those resources through these talks, through our website, through following us on a variety of different things. Copy me, co-play, curiosity, conversation, coaching. If you want to keep up, you would have known in September about Be Real if you had registered for our monthly newsletter, because we wrote about it for the first time back in September. But if you want to keep up with what some of the trends that are going on, we put out a monthly newsletter called the Download. To kind of fill in the gaps in between our newsletters, again, we do have an on-staff researcher. Her PhD is actually in more molecular research, but she's taken her love and passion for research and her desire as a mama to make certain that her kids are protected. She's taken those skills and we have her on our team. And she is regularly combing through stuff and doing the research, and which is kind of that initial part that eventually feeds into our newsletter. And so this is something you can download or that you can subscribe to. Please use the email address that you actually check and not the one used to get free dessert on your birthday. And you know the difference between those two email addresses, all right? So if you have one that you actually use, do that. We work really hard to create excellent content, and we don't want it to get lost in all the other free promos for getting 10% off on your favorite shoe store, right? So we also have an app that we've developed. This is what we did with COVID. When 70% of our company's revenue evaporated over a weekend because we couldn't talk to large groups anywhere, we're like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Well, let's develop an app. And so we did. You can, if the school wanted to, you can talk about it amongst yourselves. I'm a terrible salesperson. If you wanted to do a site license, we do site licensing. There's curriculum within there. We have a video-based curriculum that's within the app as well. And we take a lot of our other content, make it into more bite-sized kind of lessons. Our goal when writing the credit, so this isn't a monitoring or filtering, this is an information advocacy kind of app. But we were thinking, okay, in line after soccer practice, waiting for your kid to come to the car, I have 4 minutes, what can I hammer out and learn? That's kind of the setting that we're thinking of when we develop the app. It's called the Protect app. You can get it individually. It's like $3.99 a month for a subscription to it, and we're constantly improving and trying to create greater content for it. If you haven't watched the documentary Childhood 2.0, put that on your to-do list for before the end of the month. You can find it in a variety of platforms, but if you just search Childhood 2.0 the movie, this was underwritten by Bark. It's about a 2-hour documentary. Chris is interviewed in it, with a variety of other people, like Tristan Harris, who is a former Google product developer, a variety of other different people. How many of you have watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix? All right. Consider that part 1 of a 2-part series, of which this is critically important. You get to the end of The Social Dilemma on Netflix, and like, okay, great, yeah, you knew what you were doing, you did it anyway. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that you tried to manipulate and hack our brains. Great. Now what? Credits. Right? You're like, okay, it was helpful to know what was meant, but I have nothing that I can actually do with this. Childhood 2.0's goal was to kind of help you kind of have some of those things. And I think that it's appropriate for you to watch with at least your high school student. Why? Because there's high schoolers interviewed in it. So when you're watching it for the first time, be thinking, which of our kids can we watch this with the next time that we watch this? And then watch it with them. This is copy me, co-play, curiosity, conversation coaching. Take all those times and hit pause and hey, is that really true? What have your experience? Hey, what about this? What do you think about that? And that seems wrong. You just have those opportunities to have that conversation. Maybe you watch it over a couple of evenings, whatever the case may be. And I know it's kind of ironic that we're on social media, but we are, because that's where you are. Right? And so I would say if probably our most active platform is Instagram. Obviously, if we share it Instagram, it goes to Facebook as well. So if Facebook's your jam, then do that because you're old like me, and maybe that's the only thing that you got one and you only want one. All right, cool, I'm fine with it. But Instagram, we're constantly putting stuff out there, sharing stuff, creating content, so that it's kind of like fills in the gaps between our downloads, right? Those kinds of things. So, I went long. We started late. I apologize. All those things. It's been a joy to be able to spend 90 plus minutes with you. I know that this talk feels as though you're drinking from a fire hydrant. And I want to let you know that Protect Our Guys exists to help you in whatever way possible. So if you are kind of wrestling student through all this kind of stuff, and it's Thursday, Friday, next Tuesday, a month from now, whatever, and think, what about, reach out to us. We want to answer those questions. We have people that are available to do that, whether it's through direct messaging on the social media platform or through our website and the contact us page, whatever the case may be. We exist to help and bolster you so that you can be the most successful parent in the digital age. Why? Because that's what we want for us as parents. And so why not share what we're learning with you? So I enjoy to be able to serve you this evening. I will stay back and answer any questions, but if you need to leave, I am not offended that you take off now. But it's been my joy to be with you. I can't wait to meet your kids tomorrow.